The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. Great to have you. You know, if you've watched this, you've heard me probably talk about years ago when I had a bit of an accident and I had what's called a Lefort 2 break. That means I broke my nose and my cheeks and my upper jaw and now have 6 titanium plates in my face. And no, it does not set off the alarms at the airports and stuff. So that's good. But, that was a kind of a major deal. And they had to do some serious work. I was in the hospital for a week. And the goal was to heal my face. And I've got one scar right here and one right here that you can't really see. So we carry the scars, but I did heal. And I do everything I did before the accident. And they actually say that the bones in my face structure with those plates in there are stronger. Okay. There's a physical picture, I think, of a spiritual possibility, which is when we are wounded emotionally, spiritually, we can heal, but it's not always easy. And you can't just go to the hospital and they fix you up and you're out in a week. Sometimes it takes a while, but you can be stronger after inner healing. That's what we're talking about today. My guest is Kerrie Oles, and she has a book called Unlock Now. It looks just like this, and she walks through healing, and this is a journey that she has walked through. And so you're going to hear her story today, and I hope that it will encourage you and let you know that healing is possible. You can be free from your past hurts and pains. You might have scars, but that's okay. Kerrie, welcome to Life Today Live. Great to have you today.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with you.
So give us a little bit of a story about your past, just so people can see the mess that you kind of came from, because that in and of itself is an amazing story and a testimony to God's power when we turn things over to Him. Tell us a little bit about where you came from.
Yes, I grew up, in a family that was, we didn't know anything about God or Jesus, but, some things just feel normal, and that felt very normal. And there was a lot of abuse and trauma, and my life changed when I was 11 years old and my brother was killed on Christmas by a drunk driver. And I knew that Christmases would never be the same, but, Christmas did not hold the same meaning for me as it holds for all of us who love Jesus, right? But I just knew it would never be the same because that would always be the day my brother was killed. But I had no idea that the trajectory of all the members of my family would just scatter. That's the best way I know how to say it. My middle brother got so involved with drugs and crime. He was in prison my whole life. He's been in and out 9 times. And he says prison is where he feels most comfortable because of all the pain he has endured. He's never come to know the Lord. My youngest brother joined a cult shortly after that. We don't really see him ever again. I haven't seen him in over 30 years. And so what that left was me, which was a very confused adolescent girl that the 3 most predominant men in her life were gone. But the 4th was sure to follow, and that was my father. And since we had no foundation, no rock, no family, like church family, what began to happen is my dad just became a very withdrawn, hated the world sort of person because the world took his sons. And what that did to me is just send me a subconscious message. Of course, I know now that that was from the enemy, but that I was, not worthy, that I would never live up to my father loving me like he, loved my brothers. Like, I can't replace them. What do I do? And so, like any girl, young girl, when you have a void in your life, you start to fill it. And I was being driven to every prison to visit my brother on Sundays. I was very mixed up in what, the world was supposed to look like. And so I got very involved with boys and was promiscuous. And by the time I was 26, I was married and divorced twice, which when you come from a small town and you've been divorced twice by 26, you are the talk of the town, but not in a good way. But honestly, I think people weren't really being mean. I think they felt sorry for my family because we'd all lived through such trauma. If you would have told us we lived through trauma, we wouldn't have been able to pinpoint that word. We would have called it all kinds of other things. But looking back, every single member of my family experienced trauma, and we didn't know how to gain healing. And so what happened in my life is I was single for a while, living a very, very sinful, away from the Lord, just very lost life. And I met my husband, who I'm married to now, have been married to for 20 years. And he did something no other person had ever done in my life. He said, I really want to date you, but you're really messed up. And he said, would you come to church with me? And I remember thinking, church? You want me to go to church? Like, I'm not even sure that they'll let me in. And that's what I think a lot of us think when we've experienced such trauma, which can't be told in this episode. You think that maybe that's not the place where you would be most welcomed, but yet I went there, and the very first day, the pastor was talking about, do you want to feel love and peace? And I just remember thinking, I don't know those feelings. And so that day I met the lover of my soul and the love of my life. And I've been with both of them ever since.
Wow. I mean, so for any Christians out there, there's your motivation to just invite people to church, because you never know. And, some will blow you off, or, maybe be mean, but so what? You might catch a Kerrie in the process. I mean, my goodness. So what now there, I've seen the, miraculous, everything changed on that first encounter, that sort of Saul on the road to Damascus kind of encounter. But I've seen also, for most people, that there's a lot of walking out to do. What was it like for you?
Yeah, I think the first 5 years of being a new Christian at church, if I could go back and label it anything, I would have labeled it the honeymoon stage, because everything was wonderful. I just remember thinking, I'm going to go out and tell the people at Starbucks about Jesus. I'm so excited I have, and that's what, you kind of live in that state of, well, everything's wonderful. And then you start to live your life. And I started looking at the people around me. And of course, as the enemy does, he came in and said, you're never going to be loved like the pastor's daughter, or you're never going to be like the group leaders that you were now going to Bible study with. Like, your story's too dirty. I just always would hear that, like, you'll never be clean enough. Like, as if the first time I met Jesus wasn't enough, and getting baptized wasn't enough to clean my life. I would hear those words. And so what that would make me do, those were called triggers, obviously. And I would be back to my childhood in a second of all the abuse and trauma that I went through. And therefore, you kind of get, you're malfunctioning, you're getting angry at things, you're being bitter at things, and you don't really know where it's coming from, but it's because you have unhealed and undealt with pain. Yeah. It is from your past, and it's affecting your present. And it wasn't until I discovered that my life began to change.
Yeah. And that's an interesting dynamic. That confuses a lot of people. But literally, God gave us a picture in the Old Testament because he set the Israelites free from captivity in Egypt. Yes. They were free. And granted, a lot of them grumbled shortly thereafter, and we hear that too. But the interesting thing is when it came time, at the end of Moses' life for them to cross, the river and actually take the land and experience the blessings that God had promised them, the thing they had to do was fight.
Right. Yes.
Right? I mean, they were free. They were no longer slaves.
They were no longer slaves.
But they were free to fight. And the thing is, God said, look, you do it my way, I'll be with you, you'll win. And that's sort of the guarantee that we see. But a lot of people think that we're freed not just from slavery to sin, we're freed from the fight. And what I'm hearing is you discovered there is a battle.
There is a battle every day. And I just remember thinking, I don't know how to get more healing. How do I get more of Jesus?
Right.
How do I get more of the Bible? Like I would walk around a little bit confused in that. And it wasn't until I went to my very first counseling and freedom ministry appointment that I began to understand that I had some things that I had to go back and deal with from the past, because most of us say, I don't want to bring all that stuff up because I've worked hard to forget it. Really, we've just suppressed it down. And we've went to another place in our mind, but that thing is still ever present in our soul. So we have to go back and understand how to bring that lie and that pain to the Lord and let him put truth on that place where you first met the pain, so that it doesn't keep coming out in different seasons and different relationships and different opportunities, because it will still keep coming out.
So, okay, give us an example then of one of those lies that you had to put truth on and have to put truth on every day. I mean, there's probably quite a few. What stands out to you? Yeah,
every day I used to, I was very afraid of everything. Like, you're probably thinking, well, yeah, some people are afraid of heights. Some people are no, I was afraid of going outside. I was afraid of taking ibuprofen. Listen, you name it, I was afraid of it. I don't know why, but I just had a fear of everything. Like I was going to die an early death because of the consequences of my sin. Like, just fear had just wrecked my life. And I'll never forget, I was in an appointment, a counseling appointment, and they said, let's figure out where your fear first came from. And I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm having fear now. Why would I want to know where it first came from? And basically, we did an exercise that took me back to when I was about 6 years old. My brother, who eventually went on to be in prison, was already involved with drugs. And I thought he became involved in drugs when my brother died, but he was already involved in them, but I never remembered that. And he was on some kind of drugs back then. And he had come into our house and he was, being very violent, saying he wanted to kill my other brothers. And I remember hiding behind the piano. And that is when I discovered that is when fear first entered my body. So we went back to that place and we just gave that little girl a space to be afraid, because obviously I was alone. I was alone a lot in my life. And, I went back to that place and told that little girl she's okay. She is loved. She is seen by no one but Jesus. If that's all, by no one but Jesus. And, just processed what that felt like to experience that kind of trauma at 6, to see that kind of violence. And once I processed that, and then once I put truth in that space that I was not alone, that Jesus was always there, I just didn't know at 6. And then I began to take that place that felt fearful and then understand that really I should have that space feel like it was very full of faith, because God was there. I lived through it. I got through it. I became stronger because of it. And now I was sitting there as an almost 40-year-old woman, knowing and looking back at the faithfulness of God to get me through not just that moment where fear entered my life, but all the other times. And so my fear just began to subside. And listen, I do all kinds of things now. Like my boys think I'm like really like not afraid of anything. So that's just one little example.
Well,
but
that's a big thing. That's a huge
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So those kinds of things that remind us, people call them triggers, people call them all kinds of things. But I say it's a reminder of a place you once were familiar with that you've tried to forget.
Yeah. Yeah. We have the triggers, and I get it. I understand what the word means, but in different churches, we talk about Satan in different ways. And it's kind of funny if you just run across all the Christian churches. You got some that ignore him, and like don't talk about him. Like if we say his name 3 times, he's going to appear, right? And then you got others that they see a demon behind every bush, and they're everywhere. Our enemies are everywhere. They're out to get us. And when I look in Scripture, what I see is a completely defeated foe. He is an enemy. He's completely defeated. Yes, I view demons as cockroaches,
I love that analogy.
Do you like that one? Okay. They're nasty. They're annoying. They creepy crawly, but you know what? You just got to kill them. You just got to step on them. But the weapon that he has, and I think I forget Hollywood. They have no idea what they're talking about. But the one weapon that Satan does have is lies. And I think that's pretty much it, Scripture calls him the father of lies. And so when we talk about triggers, what I hear are, in a lot of ways, lies, right?
Yes, very much so lies.
So when you hear that voice that says, you really, you should be afraid, or is God really with you? I mean, okay, well, where is God in this? Because, you can't say him.
Yes.
How do you combat that?
I think whenever you're in a space, whether it's fear or anything, you have to remind yourself of all the past things that mimicked this moment, and God was faithful. Because if he did it once, he's going to do it again. He's the God of again. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. What he did for the people in the Bible and the stories that sometimes people find hard to believe, he's still going to do for us. And so I tell them all the time, remind yourself of the places that God has been faithful. And before you know it, when you're thinking of all those times, you'll go, okay, he's going to come through for me in this one, just like he did in that one.
Yep. It's so true. And that if we could do that, we would get past a lot of issues, really. Okay, I want to show people the book. Again, this is Unlocked Now by Kerrie Oles. It's available wherever you get books. And the name of the ministry is unlockedministries.com. You also have iamunlocked.org.com, one of the two?
Yes, unlockedministries.com.
Okay, so that's the quickest way to get to the website. In fact,
yes, sir.
I can punch up that website right there. There it is. There's unlockedministries.com. And the name of your podcast is
Living Unlocked.
Living Unlocked. Okay, so what do you do now? What do you do with this? And what are you seeing when people hear your testimony of being unlocked, if you will?
The ministry actually got started in prison. So I was asked to speak at a prison, and I said no because I didn't want to go to prison anymore because I'd gone there my whole life growing up. And the woman was like, please come. And so I did. And when I drove up, it happened to be the exact prison that I went to very first time at 12 years old, where my brother wasn't, but I was in the women's unit. And I told the Lord, I will not have a prison ministry. That's not what I'm not born to do that. Like all the other people want to do it. But that day changed my life because as I was speaking to those women who were incarcerated, and it was a full circle moment of how I was there at 12 and now I was back now. And I remember asking God, like, why did you bring me back here? And he said, because sometimes you have to go back to the place where the pain originated and get healed so that you can walk in the fullness that I have for you in the present. And as soon as I was speaking, this beautiful girl came up to me and she said, I just gave my life to Jesus. And I was so excited for her, but she was just shaking her head no, like, mm-mm. And I said, honey, what is the wrong? And she said, you don't understand. She said, I've been in here for 7 years and I get out in 7 days. But out there, I don't know how to stop being me. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, that's how I felt after the first 5 years of walking with Jesus. How do I stop being me?
Yeah.
And so when I drove home that day, I knew that I was going to write this 6 steps curriculum that I wrote, 6 steps to begin inner healing. Because listen, we're always healing. We're always processing. So this is just how to get people that are in transition of any kind to begin their emotional healing walk. That's all it is. And we send boxes that are filled with, like prayer cards and bracelets and the curriculum, and then another book. And it goes to not women in prison because they can't have the boxes there, but in transitional homes. So once they've gotten out of prison and they're at this really crucial trajectory of their life, they're going to go, back to where they were, or, getting their life together. Right. So we send them to transitional homes, abuse recovery, sober living homes, addiction homes, any kind of women in transition. They get these boxes and they go through the 6 weeks because we have videos online with them. And we have great stories of women, turning their life around. So that's what our ministry does. Obviously, it's based on myself being a writer and a speaker, but that is what we do to make an impact for the kingdom.
What are you seeing in that?
Oh my goodness. Well, the show isn't long enough for that, Randy. But we have testimony after testimony after testimony. See, we're not just changing that woman's life. We're not helping her understand that the God of the universe loves her enough to heal her in all the places. Like, people think my story's pretty sordid. These women, they didn't get to prison by accident. Right. They didn't, get into sober living homes by not malfunctioning. They came from abuse. They came from trauma. And now more than ever in our country, mental health is an issue. We used to all pretend it wasn't, but after COVID, now we all understand that mental health and emotional healing is needed. And these women, I'm telling you, I could talk about them all day long, because I feel like they're almost forgotten in society because they did something wrong. And they're going through steps to make their lives better. And we get to be a part of that. And we get to couple with God and, be just the conduit for him, to show them that, listen, this is not the end of their story. Yeah. This can be a brand new beginning. Yeah.
Well, if you are looking to learn those 6 steps of inner healing, obviously, pitch you to the website, unlockministries.com, and the book as well, just as a resource, right?
As a resource. It's a supplement to all your other resources.
Yeah.
It's a great resource to begin.
So, but let me just hit that first step, in case there's somebody who's like, okay, I need to start this now, and maybe I'll go online, I'll get the book, whatever. But what is that first step for someone who's just curious?
Well, I made it like an acronym. So the first step is uncover your wounds. So most of us don't even want to face the fact that we actually have some places that need healing. But in these places where we're malfunctioning in our present, like maybe you have an anger problem, maybe you have an eating disorder problem, maybe you watch porn, whatever it is, that's the place where you need to recognize, and that I call it uncover, right? Because anything left in the dark is going to stay there and fester and get worse. But when we uncover it, right, and the light of Jesus begins to hit it, and you begin to understand, oh, this is the place right here that I need to get healing. everything begins to change. Even your mind starts to change, like, okay, that wasn't so hard.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
That's just the first step.
Yeah. Well, and that's good, and that's important because when I when I broke my face and I was in the hospital, the doctor comes in. He asked me some questions, and he literally put 2 fingers right under these teeth and pulled, because when you do that break, all this is floating. It's not attached. And I screamed. It hurt. But you know what? He went, okay. And he knew immediately, right? He knew what the wound was right there. And as painful as that was, it was the first step to healing. So if you're watching out there and you want to heal, because trust me, if I hadn't gotten the help healing, I'd be a real mess today. And you could literally see it on my face. Take that first step. And if Kerrie can help you, her website is there, the book is there. At least reach out to a solid church. Don't go the cult route that her brother has. Don't go the drug route to just try to numb the pain. Deal with it. Take that first step. Kerrie, is there anything you want to add before I let you go? This is this is so critical, and people need to hear this. I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate the work that you do. And by the way, if you're watching and you're like, that's cool, I want to help her, just go to unlockministries.com, and she would welcome your support because she's helping lots of people. But I want to give the last word to you. Where do you want to leave people that have listened to your testimony and maybe need to uncover some of their own pain?
I think the best place to leave it is to understand that we don't have to sit every day and think, this is the final chapter. This is the final day of my story. If you're still living, breathing, you got a pulse, tomorrow you get to write another story. That's what we tell these women, that you get to have a new beginning, and a new beginning begins with new healing. And so that's what I would tell you. Lean into the process. And on the other side, you're going to discover that you're even better than you thought you were going to be.
Yeah. Your face will be stronger too, like mine is. Thank you so much. I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you taking the time to share with our audience today.
Y'all are amazing.
You guys out there watching, if you know someone that might need to take that first step, that's dealing with some trauma, some unhealed hurt, hit that share button and just say, hey, I think this will encourage you. And if you haven't liked, follow, or subscribe, do that. You'll get more notifications of interviews that will encourage you. I appreciate you. Check out Unlock Now and Unlock Ministries. We'll see